So for example, if someone is addicted to pornography on the web, the mindfulness actually tells you, look, as soon as you sort of press that button and enter that site, you're lost. You know, it's just like in AA or people addicted to smoking. It's once you picked up that first cigarette and it's in your mouth, that's too late already. You can't put it down then. And you have to actually stop before you pick the cigarette up. And to be able to do that, we have these wonderful techniques which we call programming mindfulness. By programming mindfulness, what you do when that trigger is not in front of you, when you feel comfortable, when you think it's actually no problem, that's when you put the suggestions into your mind. You know, say it's cigarettes, I will not pick up that first cigarette, I will not pick up that first cigarette, I will not pick up that first cigarette. Because as a meditator, I know just how the mind works. It is conditioned. You know, you are susceptible to suggestion. And if you keep saying that to yourself again and again and again, in the quietness of, say, your bedroom, when you think it's not a problem, you say it then, when it's not a problem, it's not in front of you. When it's in front of you, it's too late. And after a while, what happens, say with a cigarette smoker, normally they would actually, they're trying to give up, but they see a cigarette and it's in their mouth before they even know it. Because it's habit. It's just like brushing your teeth. You don't even need to think about it. You've done it so often. But what actually happens when they develop that degree of mindfulness and they condition themselves, I must not smoke that first cigarette, I must not smoke that, I must not pick it up, I must not pick it up, I must not pick it up. What happens just before they're about to pick it up? The mindfulness actually clicks in. It's like an antivirus, not a Norton antivirus, a Buddha antivirus, which actually stops the habitual process. And the thought comes up, no, I won't pick it up. It's a very, very effective way of actually stopping addictions. And because the mindfulness is actually pre-programmed in there to say, danger, you're going to pick up a cigarette, or you know, you're going to sort of start another affair when you're married, or I'm going to bet too much at the casino, or whatever else is you're doing. And that programming is very powerful because that picks up the signal. It's like a little red light starts flashing in your mind, danger, 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 you're maybe going too far. And then you have the opportunity to stop yourself. A lot of times you can't stop yourself because you don't know what you're doing. The mindfulness isn't there, it's habits. And so that way we can actually stop ourselves. There's other ways of stopping yourself also, to remind yourself of the dangers, what happens when you've done that before. Because some of you, you have had affairs outside of marriage. Sometimes you may have even sort of had sex unknowingly with say a 15-year-old girl or whatever it is. You didn't know she was that young, or whatever it is, or you've been attracted to somebody at work who's, you're their boss. All these sort of very, very dangerous areas of our life. Be careful. If you made a mistake once, be careful, pre-program yourself. Don't go and create that pain and problems for yourself and others again. So you program yourself, danger, danger, danger. And once you have the program danger, danger, you have all other ways of dealing with this. Obviously, that moving away from the stimulus, if at all possible, move away from the cigarettes, get out of the casino, just move out of that office or whatever else there is. If there's somebody there who's really sort of attracting you too strongly, you have the choice to do that. So you're actually taking control of your sensuality if it's going too far. And again, throughout this talk, you've seen that I'm not saying sensuality is bad, I'm just saying the extremes of sensuality. And it's quite wonderful and fine, you're having a wonderful relationship, enjoying sex with your partner, homosexual, whatever, whatever is creating that bond between the two of you, that's wonderful, that's fine, but be careful not to take it to the point where it harms yourself and harms another person. And that sort of sensuality which you even see on the TV or you see on the movies, and that's not really the problem at all. Because, it's a long time since I've seen the TV, to see sort of, people actually tell me what goes on those TVs. But I remember I went to visit my mother in London about 15 years ago. The first time I'd seen TV in about 7 years. And it was like a cop and movie show. I forget what it was called, not Defenders or something. Anyways, half an hour TV show, repeated every week. And as I was watching it with my mother, for giving her company, I couldn't believe that how many people died in about half an hour. I was actually counting them. And I got to about a dozen or something, got shot and killed. I couldn't believe this because before I became a monk, the TV was so tame. Because I had 7 years, I hadn't seen the actual progress, of actually, violence on TV. The contrast was so strong inside of me because the police show I remembered as a kid was a police show. Anyone old enough might remember this, Dixon of Dock Green. And Dixon of Dock Green was this London bobby in the days when they didn't have guns. And if he caught a burglar, the burglar would say, "Oh, Sergeant Dixon, it's an honour to be caught by you, sir." And apparently they didn't do that anymore. Things have changed. And no one got shot, and if they did ever get hurt, if there was a bullet, they'd go, "Ooh, ooh, ooh," and you wouldn't see any blood at all. And they just fall on the floor without any sort of gore or anything, but apparently things have changed enormously since then. But of course, if you try and censor this, what happens? If you say, okay, so no sort of lewd speech on the TV, or no naked flesh, or no sex, what happens? It just goes underground. And of course, when it goes underground, that makes it even more interesting. When it's sort of an illegal video, or when it's something that's not obviously the way to deal with sensuality, to prohibit it. Whether it's porn movies on the internet or whatever, it always has to be some sort of restraint. And that restraint is done from understanding, is it going to harm me or harm another person? It makes it sensible. You can understand why. And that's the only real way of dealing with this. Whether it's oneself, one's kids, one's partner, whatever. To appeal to their wisdom and encourage that wisdom. And actually to see the reason why these things were a problem. And actually give strategies to deal with addictions or with problems, but without the guilt trips, because just the guilt makes things even worse. What happens with guilt, you're saying that you are worthless, you're a mistake, and people who are made to feel guilty or are punished, they have low self-esteem. Because they're low self-esteem, they actually look for harming themselves. Now, obviously that's a great generalization of a very complex process, but that explains it almost in a nutshell. You make a person feel guilty, they want to punish themselves, they don't want to be happy, so this idea of not harming themselves and not harming others, why? They deserve to be harmed, so that actually the addiction carries on. So that the guilt trips are actually counterproductive to actually having some sensible happiness and good health in a world of sensuality. But also that people ask, why are monks celibate and why are nuns celibate anyway? Why do we actually reject sensuality? And are we somehow weird, depraved? I sometimes have good fun as a monk. It was over a year ago that I was invited to the Gay Pride breakfast, which was at Curtin University, about a year and a half ago, I think. And when I asked to give a little talk, I just went up there and say, I am more deviant than all of you gay, lesbians and transgenders, because I'm celibate. So I'm the most deviant in the whole room. I'm just making a little joke about that. And obviously I respect people of all genders and all sexual preferences. But the point was that my preference, being celibate, was even more threatening to many people. Because what are monks and nuns doing? Giving up? So are we afraid of sex? Is it the case we were hurt when we were young? Many people think that way. Actually, I mentioned this story a few weeks ago, but this was actually, there was a monk called Ajahn Brahm. He was one of the old Thai monks who lived in this beautiful monastery, Putok. It's like a top-hat mountain. And some of the Thai people know him. He was a very famous monk at the time. I went to visit him, and this lady came from Bangkok and asked this monk, did you become a monk because you had a failed love affair? And he said, no, of course not. He said, she said, that makes sense. You're ordained to forget, and you have forgotten by now. It's logically consistent what she said, but that's not why she ordained as a monk. And I never ordained as a monk because I got jilted in my love affairs. The reason I became a monk is because I know I had sex, I knew what sex was like, but when I meditated once, I got this incredible experience which was better than sexual orgasm, and that was just really shocked me. What's going on there? And so I decided to become a monk just for a couple of years to find out what meditation was really like. And being a monk, you have these rules of no sex. I didn't really understand what that was for at first. That's just what a monk does. But after a while, when you understand the nature of the mind, you understand that sensuality actually does draw you out into the world. And the meditation is actually going deeper inside. So actually, the more you limit your sensuality, actually the easier it is to meditate. You don't get drawn out so much. So that when I became a monk for a couple of years, sure, it was hard to restrain the mind looking out for the beautiful girls and the nice food and the TVs and the movies and all these other sensual things that were missing in the world. But I also had some interesting experiences. I mentioned actually going to visit my mother and seeing the TV after 7 years. But I also remember just the first time that after 7 years I've flown in aircraft. Now from Bangkok to London I got a cheap fare on Philippine Airlines, on economy class. And this was 25 years ago. I couldn't believe just how sensuous and luxurious economy class on Philippine Airlines was. It was my senses were just amazed, because I'd been in a forest monastery which was very, very austere. Well, I realised from that sensuality is very relative. To other people, cramped in the economy class of an aircraft 25 years ago, that was just so tough and just such an ordeal. But for me, who'd never sat on a chair for 7 years, being served like food which was hot and which was Western, which I could eat. I even got ice cream. I remember that ice cream. In a tub instead of on my bowl, just melting into my rice and curry. And even the music, the music on the plane, I never heard music for 7 years. It was amazing. That was just so sensual. I couldn't get that out of my head afterwards. So you see, that's obviously a joke for you, because you go on an aircraft and the music on there just, it's yucky, and the food, aircraft food, people sort of think is disgusting. And economy class is sort of so cramped up. But for me, because I've been living a far more austere existence in these forest monasteries, I was amazed, in the aircraft there wasn't even any mosquitoes. The first time in 7 years I was free from mosquitoes for more than an hour or two. That was, to me, was luxurious and sensual. So you can see sensuality is also relative. And the sensuality which you're experiencing now, so 10 years ago, that would blow people's minds. The houses you live in, the cars you drive, what you see on the TV. This is nature. So the point is, sensuality is going to get more intense in another 10 years' time. And we can't really stop it. We can't sort of have some great censor somewhere saying, no, we're going to go back to Dixon of Dock Green, we're not going to have any violence. We're going to have the presenter of the 6 o'clock news wearing a burqa. I don't know who that is anyway, some floozy on the Channel 9 or Channel 7, but you can't do that. The point is that we live in a sensory world. If you want to get out of the sensory world, come into a retreat centre or a monastery for a few weeks to get some sort of idea of a perspective. And if you want to do meditation, sometimes you just have to leave that sensory world outside. Instead of being drawn outside, drawn inside. If you really want to get into deep meditation, it's an interesting thing to do, because you actually do get incredibly joy of actually not being caught up in that sensory world. What actually you do is you say, I can stop looking if I want to. And one of the great things of being a monk for so many years, you can actually look at a beautiful girl and an ugly girl and look at them exactly the same. Not many men can do that. I know one story. I forget who this, I should actually find out who this lady was, but she was some TV star. I think she was in Water Rats or something. And I don't know her name, but somebody told me she was really, really famous. If I told you her name now, I think you'd all know her. But I went to teach it was just an afternoon meditation session in Sydney. And this fellow had a little group in Darling Point, like a really top affluent place of Sydney. And so he's in this little group. There's about sort of 20, 30 people. I was talking about meditation. And this lady kept on looking at me and smiling. And I didn't know, she was acting very strange, not like an ordinary girl. And in the end, and I just took it in my stride and taught the meditation, etc. And afterwards I mentioned to the person organising, he said, that lady was acting really strange. And he told me that was a famous TV actress. And I figured out she was looking at me strangely because I didn't recognise her. What she was actually saying is, see, it's me, I'm the famous TV star. And I didn't know. It's pretty honest. It was a great experience when you're sort of a monk, you don't know who's who. So because of that, she's obviously, must be some sort of very beautiful girl, and sort of an ugly girl. And what is beauty and ugly anyway? Why is that to attract us? When you're a monk and you meditate a lot, you don't see that anymore. And I love that, being a monk, having that opportunity to see a beautiful girl sits here, an ugly girl sits here, you spend the same amount of time as with both. You don't, the ugly girl, go on, off. Because that sort of sensuality sort of starts to disappear. So it's great being able to, if you can, resist that sensuality, you can be more fair to other people. So this is why we do it as a monk, and we do lots of meditation. So it's great actually doing a little retreat, because you understand sensuality much more, and you can understand you can restrain it, so it's up to you, you can take it or leave it. Because sometimes people think they want to be free. And the free world is being able to enjoy our sensuality, we should have no limits, whatever we want to watch. The most violent movies, or the most sexual movies, the most deviant sex or whatever. Let's have a free world. Let's allow people to do this. But the point is, people aren't free. Sometimes those sensory desires actually captivate us. We become a prisoner of our sensuality. Which is why that we have to have that sex, we have to have that drug, we have to gamble. And sometimes people get to the point they have to have those relationships outside of their marriage. And they hurt, and they realise they weren't in control after all, there wasn't freedom. So it's a great thing actually to investigate. Is it the freedom of sensuality, or has sensuality got its limits where you're in the prison of sensuality? You have to have it. So it's great following a little bit of mindfulness and restraint, because you find you can almost like control your sensuality. You can go as far as you want. If you think it's going to harm another person, harm yourself, you can say no, you can stop it. And that's what we do with mindfulness, built of meditation, with wisdom, taking away the guilt, taking away the evil and the bad, and putting in the word skillful, and understand what that word skillful truly means. Well, it's really going to be serving our purpose, serving our interests, what we really want to get out of our life. When we understand that, we understand the Buddhist approach to sensuality. Not to deny it, not to cover it up, but to deal with it. And deal with it with wisdom, with mindfulness, in a way which can create the best happiness for ourselves and all other beings. So that's the talk on sensuality this evening. Thank you.